Hey, I'm Jules.
And I'm Marc, and we are the co-founders of Mindful.
We started Mindful to make calm more accessible, beginning with the world's first tasteless L-theanine blend.
L-theanine is the amino acid found in matcha that helps promote calm focus. We're trying to make it easier to enjoy, no brewing required.
And Mindful Mondays is our behind-the-scenes series on building this brand from the ground up. What we're learning, what's working, and why we believe the world needs calmer energy.
Some weeks we'll talk about product development, branding, or entrepreneurship.
And other weeks, we'll just keep it real about wellness, personal learnings, and staying grounded while building something new. All right, let's get into it. Marc, if you want to take us through some Jade Leaf highlights, I will absolutely share some of mine as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can start from a purely business standpoint. Jade Leaf spanned from our founding of it to the point when it was sold to a private equity firm at the end of 2020. That was a span of about 6 years. And our growth trajectory over those years was actually pretty linear. So we got started in 2014, kind of midway through was when the idea first struck, and we started to connect the dots to get the business going. That took a good 8 months. We had our first, pouch of culinary matcha for sale on Amazon in December of 2014. And I think someone bought it like right before Christmas, and that was a cool moment. The first time you
It's
sell
always the first ones,
to a
that's so
stranger.
neat.
Yeah, yeah, you'll never forget it. Because you're like, this person trusted something that I put out there. Anyway, so we really got rolling at the beginning of 2015. That was our first full year of business, and that was pretty much purely on Amazon, just doing what we could to build up our search rank, to get reviews on our listing, to improve our sourcing, to be more efficient with that and get better product and improve our packaging. We were iterating rapidly all throughout that year and frankly, all throughout the life of the business. At the end of that first full year of 2015, we had done about 500K in sales, which was awesome. That was enough for me to be able to go full time right at the end of that year. My co-founder, Will, wouldn't go full time until a couple years later when we were a little bit bigger and more stable, if you will. But from that point forward, the business effectively doubled year after year up until the acquisition. And a couple of those highlights along the way by 2017, I think, so this is now 2.5 years in, is when we became the #1 ranked listing on Amazon. If you search for matcha, we were the top result. We had the most reviews. We had the bestseller tag. That did kind of step function the business when those things started to align, and we became the de facto matcha that people would buy when searching for at Amazon. That success there got us the attention of Walmart, who actually reached out to us and was like, hey, we see you're the top seller on Amazon. We've been noting matcha's popularity rising and rising. We want to get the very best on our shelves. Can you guys, sell to us? And we had never done retail whatsoever. We weren't even sure we wanted to. We knew it was a whole different game than the e-commerce game we'd been playing. But we were opportunistic, so we said, yeah, of course. And had a crash course in kind of retail sales over about a month, got set up on Walmart's somewhat complicated systems to be able to ship them product and field their orders and kind of get our act together, I guess, in order to service. I think it started with about 500 stores. Eventually, it would go to all 4,000, I want to say.
Incredible.
So that, yeah, everything was kind of a learn as you go learning curve. But the Walmart placement did well out of the gate. People were buying it off the shelves at a high enough velocity that Walmart wanted to put us in more and more stores. That success got the attention of Target, who we not too long after got onto their shelves. So it was a very somewhat backwards path to go straight into a big box like Walmart. Most brands would start with a smaller chain of local grocers or start in the natural channel with like a Whole Foods, start in a few stores and kind of work their way up to the big stores. We sort of went backwards, but it worked for us. And over time, the business kept growing in each of these channels, respectively. Amazon was always the largest channel of where we were selling to the most customers. Retail was small at first, but by the time the company sold was a good 30% of the business. The one channel we always struggled with was the direct to consumer, or the online store, if you will. And I think in retrospect, we could have done a lot more there and been more creative. We were just so focused on the channels that we had working, particularly Amazon and then retail, that we never gave it the time it deserved. This day and age, a lot of brands, their online web store is their number one channel. And that's a great thing, because it's the place where you're able to really best connect with your customer, have that stronger relationship, be able to market to them in more creative ways, and get feedback from them, ask them questions, present your brand in just the way you want it to be presented. So I think it is the best channel if you can get good at it, and one that we'll put a lot more emphasis on Mindful and other projects going forward. But yeah, the Jade Leaf journey was, I would say, charmed. We were timed correctly, and we worked hard, of course, and I think we approached the channels in the correct way because of how the broader populace came to know matcha and learn about matcha. Amazon was one of the first places most people would go to educate themselves on what's out there. And because we presented so well there, that kind of gave us the foundation to become the preeminent matcha brand in the US. So yeah, when 2020 came around, again, our foundation online, particularly on Amazon, was very helpful when COVID hit and online shopping became the only choice, and people were looking for healthy green tea. So the business actually grew a good deal that year. And at the end of the year, this can be a story for another time, the various reasons that led to us selling the business. Um, but it made sense to us, and I think it was correct for where we were at and what the team was looking to do as well. So we did decide to sell. Most of the team, or I think everyone, effectively stayed on at least for some period of time. Some are still there, in fact. Will and I both stayed on for 2 years before we officially kind of stepped back from a day-to-day role with the company. At this point, the new owners are operating it beautifully and doing really cool things. It's fun to see when they launch new products and
New
continue to
campaigns.
yeah,
Yeah.
continue to grow the brand. That means a lot. So I feel really good about it. But I'll stop there. That's kind of the business trajectory. I know there's a lot of other highlights that we can touch on along the way.
Yeah. What a beautiful chapter.
It was. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah. A lot of fun things.
The height of our team was 5 of us: Yumi, Will, Robbie, and June. And the year and a half, or about 2 years, that we all were working together are my absolute fondest memories, and something I would hope that you and I are able to recreate in some ways, or rekindle as we
Oh,
grow in life.
absolutely. Those are the parts, and I touched on it in episode 1 of this series. I was searching for that connection, that culture, and I very much appreciated how you and Will were very open to a people first culture. And that's what I experienced from you and Will, in the care that you showed me, and not only me, but the team. And so how do we now kind of extrapolate that out and have that experience be kind of at the forefront? I believe your internal marketing matters just as much as your external marketing. If the people on your founding team understand what we're doing, we're all aligned on a mission, we all have a fire under us to see that through, people on the outside will feel that level of passion and fire. And, I know it's just the two of us right now, but as we grow our team, there's certain qualities or characteristics I think contribute to a really great founding team member. Culture is one of the most important things to a company. And I feel like more and more companies today are starting to understand that and put emphasis on it. But it's something that was absolutely one of my favorite parts. There were high points and really low points of that too. Like the human, it's just this multifaceted human experience going into the pandemic and all the things that happened along that way too that were challenging from a culture standpoint, because the company was structured remotely, and it was at a time where that wasn't the norm. It wasn't normal at all. I think we were even exploring, like, okay, do we have a headquarters here in the Bay Area? Do we all meet up, or is that in Portland or Seattle? But it ended up working in our favor, and we were still able
Yeah,
to
when
build a
everyone had
really
to go
strong.
remote, we were already
Yeah,
doing it.
we've been doing that for years, and so it worked in our favor, and still being able to create those strong bonds, although we all lived in different parts of the country. I think were pretty awesome. Some people even lived in other countries at certain points too. And yeah, the culture side of it, definitely a highlight for sure. All the fun things we did as a team that I think bonded us. It helped us really understand each other. And especially in my own journey, a highlight of mine, I really appreciated June in particular.
Uh-huh.
You know, June, very behind the scenes guy. He was our director of supply chain, but did a lot, you know, even outside of his scope. And at the time, because I was so green and so new to marketing, there was a lot that I didn't know. And so he took the time to explain things to me and to coach and mentor me in ways. And I appreciate it. He didn't have to do that at all. He could have been like, this is your job. You need to know these things. But he slowed down, and week to week, we had conversations where he essentially was teaching me about analytics and how to read them and how to
Yeah, I think
deliver
you're
them.
wanting to be more driven by
Data
data, wanting
driven.
to understand
Yeah.
the data better to inform your intuitions, which were fantastic, but can always be taking that extra step when you really drill down and analyze feedback and
Yeah.
consumer behavior. Yeah.
And having a rounded experience of understanding the people, because at the end of the day, the business is for people. So do you understand people? But what are the people telling you through the metrics and the data? And that was an area that I was so overwhelming to me. I had no idea. I mean, that was never a part of the conversations I was in at my previous roles in education. So the fact that even that thing, June took time out of his day, his busy day, to coach me week to week and help me kind of, it was like a muscle that I was strengthening over time. And it got to a point where I was putting my own dashboards together, and he and I were going through unit economics, and I was breaking things down for the different product launches we had. And he was like, wait, Jules, did you do this by yourself? And I was like, yeah. So like, even, you know, the culture amongst the team, there was a care that we had. And I do trust and I do believe that we will, in our own new way in this chapter, see that through with people that care about our mission, who care about the things that the company will bring to the forefront. I know this is a passion of yours, Marc. So if you could kind of walk us through sourcing. I know we have some matcha brand founders that also follow. They're a part of, we don't have a name yet for this community
Mm.
that exists in my close friends group on Instagram, but there are some matcha brand founders, there are some business owners. Are there any tips, tidbits, things that you could share that could be valuable to them as they kind of embark on their own journey?
Perhaps I can tell our story, and
Hopefully
to the
there's
extent that it
enough
is
there.
helpful to others, hopefully they can pull some insights. And we're always open to more specific questions. So feel free to follow up. One could argue that sourcing was the most fun part of the business overall, just because how matcha is made and the roots it has in Japanese culture are so incredible. And to the extent that, you know, anything we talk about here around how Jade Leaf evolved its supply chain that is helpful to others, I hope it is. But as always, if you have questions or want to follow up with more specific things, you know, reach out to us anytime. But the sourcing for Jade Leaf was an interesting journey. When we got started in 2014, we were just two guys that had bought matcha from the store or from Amazon, and that's all we knew. So being that all we knew, we kind of scoured anyone and everyone that was selling matcha on Amazon to try to identify the ones who had a good product that seemed like they knew where it was coming from. They were more connected to the source. You could kind of tell the brands that were just sort of marketing fronts and the ones that actually were connected back to a farm or some sort of business in Japan that was exporting. So we did that, and we found one who was selling matcha that we thought was of good quality. We reached out to the business and said, hey, I know you're selling this under your brand name, you know, could we private label from you? And for anyone who doesn't know what that is you're putting your brand and packaging on a product that someone else is producing. So it was a gentleman who was actually a Japanese gentleman who had moved to Sacramento, had existing relationships with a farm back in Japan, was buying it in bulk, shipping it to a small facility he had in Sacramento, and was producing enough units to sell for his listings on Amazon. And he was definitely totally open to working with us, you know, because we were going to place large orders, you know, hundreds of units at a time. So we connected the dots, got our packaging printed, got it sent out to his little Sacramento shop, and you know, he filled it with the matcha that he was sourcing from this farm. And for about 6 months, this relationship worked okay, up until the point where in kind of mid 2015, we started to sell more than he could keep up with. He only had a couple people working with him to fill these pouches with the matcha he was getting from Japan. So we said, okay, well, this is a problem where we've outgrown our supply. Who do we even go to at this point? So we actually traced back the farm that he was sourcing from, because it was listed in the documentation. Everything was organic certified. So that being the case, there's a very clear, transparent supply chain from where it comes from to where it's sold. So we could identify the farm, and I tried to kind of research them on the web, and there's not a whole lot. The farms in Japan aren't, you know, marketing guru businesses. If they even have a website, that's kind of a
Very
miracle.
ambiguous.
But luckily, this one did. It was very basic, as you might imagine, but it had one important thing, which was an email address. And so I was able to shoot an email out to this farm, wondering if, anyone would ever read it. But sure enough, not too long later, an email came back to me in, I'll never forget it, in one of the most kind of broken English responses I've ever read, but I could tell it was the farmer, at least someone working at the farm, trying to say, hey, we got your inquiry and yeah, let's talk about it. But let me introduce you to a broker that we work with so that he speaks English, so he'll be able to kind of work things out better. So we got in touch with the broker, and over the course of, a few weeks, kind of arranged for him to put together an order directly from the farm. And then we were off. The order arrived. It was great quality, the same, even better, in fact, quality than what we were getting from the gentleman in Sacramento. And it was packaged well and everything looked good. And we're like, oh, this is awesome. And for another 6 months, that worked out great. Our orders got bigger and bigger. The farm was willing to do new things. That's where we first introduced our ceremonial tins, kind of working our way up to having a broader catalog of matcha options. But yeah, another 6 months go by and those same issues start cropping up where the farm is like, hey, these orders are getting a little too big. We're going to need a lot more time. Really, we have plenty of matcha. Our farm is large and grows a lot of tea, but we don't have the manpower to, package it into all of your pouches and tins in a timely manner. And so we're like, all right, well, that's tough. We love working with this farm. We have a great relationship. So we figured we could maybe start to buy it in bulk and find other facilities here in the US that could do the packaging and continue to work with this farm, but increase our scale by taking care of the packaging part. So that's what we thought we were going to do. And so we started looking for partners in the US that could do just the packaging piece. And very serendipitously in that search, literally in our backyard, Will was living in Hayward, California at the time, was a facility that was owned by a Japanese food manufacturing and logistics business. And they said, hey, yeah, we can definitely fill your pouches and tins with matcha that you're sourcing, but P.S. we also source matcha too, and we could kind of do it all for you. And at first we were actually very apprehensive about that, because we were like, no, we have such a good relationship with this farm. We know the quality is good. We don't want to spoil that. But to make the decision, we actually went out and visited Japan towards the end of that year and visited both the farm we were working with and this new provider that had relationships with multiple farms to get the matcha that they were sourcing. And in that trip, kind of realized that, hey, it's pretty clear here that in order to scale, to bring this business where we want it to be able to grow and serve matcha to as many people as we can here in the US, we need to go with this new partner. Because not only do they have the packaging capability, but they have sourcing with not one farm, but multiple, and the ability to source from even more. There was a network of farms that came to be called the Kizuna Farm Network that established this countrywide supply chain for matcha. The major growing regions for matcha are actually spread out throughout the whole island. And they were able to source from all of them and logistically take those raw materials, get them processed, get them packaged, get them to the US at scale. And that turned out to be maybe the best decision or the most important decision in the history of Jade Leaf was entering into that relationship, because they did scale with us over the years to come. And that capacity and access to that much supply is what allowed Jade Leaf to be the most affordable matcha on the market, the most comprehensive for the quality that it was. We always knew that it was a function of, hey, we want to be as good as we can be quality wise and at as competitive a price as we can be for that given quality. That was always our guiding goal. And this relationship with this sourcing capacity allowed us to achieve that and maintain it throughout all the years that we were in business. So it was very serendipitous, as I said, but opportunistic at the same time. And we did our best to maintain relationships. You know, we still stayed in touch with that original farm. You know, they understood the situation. And I think, in fact, years later, some of their matcha entered into our broader supply chain again, so it kind of came full circle. So yeah, it was a cool journey, and visiting Japan year after year to visit these tea fields, meet new farmers, check on production. That was one of the most fun parts
Oh,
of building
absolutely.
Jade Leaf overall. And Jules, I'll never forget the first year that you got to join us on one of those trips because it was truly magical.
Definitely highlight of my life thus far. You, Mark, were my entry point to a lot of the matcha education. So when I started with my matcha pages, and as a matcha lover, I just knew I loved the way it tasted.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that
where
way it
we
made
all
me,
start, right?
yeah,
Just falling in love with
tasted good.
the
I
powder itself.
felt good. But there wasn't much I knew outside of that. I didn't know about, honestly, a lot. In our one-on-one meetings, you would share and kind of pull back the curtain for me and be like, hey, do you know what these things are? And I'm like, I have no idea. And so we would have conversations about cultivars and sourcing and all the things that I honestly today geek out over. Those are the things, the variables in which I dial in tea or matcha, or the details I search for when I'm wanting to source matcha for myself for my own consumption. Started there. And the first Japan trip, my goodness, I got so emotional because I was like, wow, this is, it felt like a full circle moment for me to start with an Instagram page, just sharing my love for matcha, to now be standing in the bushes and being able to have access to touch the leaves and to watch them being processed was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I know today it's a little bit more, it seems just from the optics, it might be easier for the everyday person to visit a tea farm. I know back then you really needed your relationships.
Matcha tourism, some of the suppliers have picked up on it and yeah, now offer opportunities to visit the farms.
Yeah.
I imagine they're a little more glossy, where you don't get in the nitty-gritty of how it's made and how the the farm business operates. But nonetheless, you still get to see the tea field and experience the aromas and just the whole aura of it all.
I just remember Harima-san, he just pulled freshly steamed tea leaves, like a whole mound of it in his hand, and just started eating them and like offered some to me, and tasted it, and
Yeah.
it was delicious. I loved
Yeah, he
it.
wanted you to identify like how they knew it was good.
Yeah. And it was such a life-changing moment for me that I will never forget. And segues into a highlight, at least for I mean, I feel like it's a highlight for me, but I feel like it's one for you as well, was our limited edition collection. So you talked about quality and the things that I think really separate Jade Leaf, especially at that time, for people wanting to enter into the matcha space and they're exploring matcha, is, well, what kind of matcha do I like and what do I look for? There's so many options today. As an entry point, I think it's incredible, but we had an offering specific to the, matcha aficionados, the purists who wanted to refine their palates and develop them to taste the nuances and different cultivars or even single origin offerings. And so that was my personal favorite. I loved working with you on that each year. Got to sample. I remember receiving all these samples, foil pouches of the different offerings.
They were the best of the best. That was by
Yeah.
design. It was like, hey, what we would ask each tea farmer, hey, what is your very best harvest for this year? Which field, which cultivar turned out to be, your favorite, and those were the ones we wanted to showcase.
And we did. And such a special moment where back then there weren't many brands talking about single origin, single cultivar, even organic versus conventional. And we were starting to spearhead most of that conversation through this series that we released each year. I don't believe Jade Leaf is doing it anymore.
No, unfortunately, I wish they kept that one. But now, like you said, there's many other brands sharing matcha at that level and hopefully pricing it fairly. That's still something we try to do.
Yeah. I mean, given the state of matcha today, prices will likely increase not only because of tariffs, but the shortage and just the variables that go into what's contributing to it for people who want to continue to develop their palate or their love of matcha is a sacrifice I think some people are willing to make, paying $70 to $100 for 30 grams or 20 grams of matcha.
Yeah, more and more. You start to draw the parallels, and we always tried to specialty coffee, how different beans from different regions of the world or different roasting techniques, all these variables can lead to a certain flavor note. Wine, I think, is an even more accessible analogy where people know that, yeah, different wines taste different. They're all made from grapes, but the grapes are grown in different ways, in different places, processed differently, and those can all lead to particular notes. And yeah, I think in the beginning, when Americans were just learning of matcha, there was sort of a glossed over like matcha is matcha. It tastes one way. But just like coffee grew from like everyone drinking Folgers to now thousands and thousands of specialty coffee brands, which all have, particular tasting notes or aspects to them that people seek. It seems like matcha's on its own journey where folks are seeking out different tasting notes of matchas and picking out like, hey, this one is more umami, this one's sweeter, this one's more acidic. Actually being able to identify those differences and appreciating them and enjoying them
Yeah.
is really cool to see.
That is really cool to see. And one thing, I know we have a lot of matcha lovers who have
Yeah.
started to support Mindful, so thank you all. One thing along your matcha journey, if I could just press upon one thing, is to just have fun with it. I know that there's a lot, especially today, there's so much education and matcha creators who are sharing from their perspective, this is what makes good matcha, but really you decide that for you. Your palate is unlike anyone else's palate. So it's such an abstract expression of your experiences that you've had, the food that you've tasted. So if you enjoy a particular matcha that someone else may say isn't of great quality, to each their own.
No,
Enjoy and have fun with it. Just expand, taste all the different kinds of matchas. There's so many.
no, I think again the wine metaphor helps a lot where sometimes people tease sommeliers. Uh, they'll be given a blind taste testing of a $10 wine and they'll say how exquisite it is. That is really the truth, right? Like price is sometimes helpful, but often not very indicative of how enjoyable something actually is. Expensive matcha tends to be expensive because of a rarity factor, not because it cost more to make or went through some more premium process or whatever. It's generally a rarity and the brand's ability to tell a story about that rarity and convince you that it is worthy of such a high price tag. And maybe that is warranted. I think a lot of people abuse it. So always trust the brand you're buying from is pricing something responsibly to you. I think there is a time and a place for, pricing a rare thing more highly because it's coveted and a lot of people want it. So you need to make sure the folks that really, really want it are the ones that get it. But anyway, just because matcha is expensive doesn't mean it tastes that much better. In fact,
Or is
some of the
higher
more
quality.
yeah, some of the more expensive ones I've had were not good at all. So again, to Jules, your point, to each their own, kind of celebrate your own journey, be honest with yourself about what you actually like, and don't rely just on price to kind of tell you what's good.
Just trust your palate,
Yeah,
and your palate will tell you because what I might taste as one thing, you might taste as something else, and we're drinking the same offering. And
yeah.
we're none of us are wrong. It's just a different experience that we're having. But
A
yeah,
lot of
I
people love
digress.
two buck chuck wine.
Hey, I don't drink anymore, but when I did,
Yeah,
that did it. That did it for
right.
me.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.